The sun is really our ideal source of light as humans. We evolved under it. It's a changing light source throughout the day. In the morning, we see relatively dim light and relatively amber light. In the middle of the day, we see much more blue light. And then in the evening, again, it returns to amber. And that really is just an artifact of the path length the sun takes through the atmosphere. In the morning, it's a long path. In the middle of the day, it's a short path. And out of that, the blue light, which is part of the overall spectrum, light is really a combination of colors, gets filtered out. So in the morning, you have very little blue light. In the middle of the day, enormous amount of blue light. In the evening, very little blue light. And our bodies have adapted to see that signal. We'll go into just how that works. But what does this do to us? We actually have a melatonin cycle that follows the sun. In the morning, we wake up, melatonin drops off rather dramatically. We reach maximum alertness in the middle of the day. In the evening, melatonin initiates, and we all become sleepy and we go to sleep. Now, there is a bit of a problem. Like this graph here on the right is probably from somebody in their mid-20s. But if we look out over time, as people age, they produce negligible amounts of melatonin. It doesn't mean that elders can't sleep. It doesn't mean that they have inadequate melatonin to fall asleep, but they do have a greater issue with sleep disturbance, wakefulness during the night. And this is often the time when incidents occur, accidents happen. So we really have to look at this rather carefully. Even if you look at what's been studied and how it's been studied, we can discuss a lot of light's effects on people, and many of them essentially are influencing sleep. But perhaps the most noteworthy one to draw attention to for this group is that Alzheimer's, dementia, has had a long clinical observation that those patients who sleep well do well in their managing their disease. Those patients who sleep poorly, unfortunately, do not. They tend to perish faster and have a harder time with the disease. So there is some kind of link there, and a great deal of research is going into showing how that all works. But of course, it's a complex topic, and creating a study long enough for any kind of chronic disease is a challenge. So what is this sensitivity to blue light? It turns out we have a third sensor on our eyes. We use rods and cones to give us spatial awareness, but we also use a system that has an intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cell, which is only sensitive in the blue part of the light spectrum. It's a relatively recent discovery that this is how this works, but let me go into how it controls us. All of the light that enters your eye actually does not wind up at your visual cortex. Some of it signals these intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, which communicate to another part of the brain, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is really the clock of our bodies. That turns on and off our pineal gland. So it's very simple. A lot of blue light, the pineal gland is signaled to produce no melatonin. No blue light, suddenly the eye realizes it's starting to get nighttime, and we respond to that by creating melatonin. Very interesting system. Why is sleep so important? What's the big deal with getting a good night's sleep? Why is it just a control valve for almost everything? Well, in 2012, a group in Rochester got interested in this, and they actually started looking at brain activity and how brains functioned. There are 25% of our energy. Quite a lot of our energy winds up in our brain. So we create a great many metabolites in our brain. We make a lot of waste products. And unfortunately, our brains lack what's known as a lymphatic system, which is the rest of your body's way of clearing these waste products. Unfortunately, the brain doesn't have this. It operates in a completely different way. And this is what it does. In deep sleep, more or less the end of the sleep pattern, we have an incredible ability to increase the interstitial spaces in our brains and clear out those waste products, avoiding things like brain fog, which I think many of us have tried to cure with espressos and Red Bulls at various times. But the fact of the matter is you can't really regain very much because your body during wakeful periods does not do a tremendously good job of flushing those waste products out. So this is a huge clue to researchers understanding why brain chemistry is as it is, and why a deep sleep is necessary to really get these brain functions to be well optimized. Now there's starting to be an increased awareness of blue light and its impacts. Many of us have these devices like iPads and such, and normal operation has a large blue peak in its behavior based on the LEDs that are in it. But fortunately, the manufacturers have put in a night shift function to reduce that blue peak. This is a very good idea for people who use their devices late at night, which I'm one of those people. So I have everything on night shift. And what is it doing? It's diminishing the blue peak, giving you less of that light that signals you to stay awake and allowing you potentially to sleep a bit better. But our system is quite different. Our system, our PERFEKTlight system, is really advanced circadian lighting. It automatically adjusts all of the light around you to match the light that is outside during the day. And in doing this, you can see a diagram of actually how it was constructed there by our CTO. We've been able to, by a combination of LEDs, get to not only this sunlight inside, but we can also do very, very accurate, what's known as color rendering. So an object you look at under our lighting looks basically the same as it does outside. So simply said, we're very high on the color rendering index. So how do we accomplish this? We make a combination of lighting that in the morning has very much that diminished blue level at sunrise. And then throughout the day, it builds in its blue content till noontime, when maximal alertness should be on the way. And then we take it back down again in the evening, both in spectrum and intensity. It's important to vary the intensity as well, so that people become somnolent and go to sleep in an appropriate way. Now, what's the implications of this? Lighting studies have already shown with less sophisticated systems. The first one was done by the DOE through their Pacific Northwest National Labs group, 50% reduction in sleep disturbances, quite a profound result. Harvard followed up with a study on falls, and they saw a 60% reduction. So these studies are beginning to provably link the influence of lighting over the well-being of elders. And we all know that, I don't need to give this audience any more information about this, but falls are costly. They diminish quality of life enormously, especially if there's a fracture. And what we'd really like to stay away from is the emergency room. We'd like to have very many fewer of those trips, especially late at night. We'd like to have fewer workman comps claims from people trying to help individuals who have fallen up from their being on the floor. And this information is starting to be disseminated for some of our deployments to prospective residents, and people are pleased to hear this. In point of fact, our first facility we lit with PERFEKTlight has been the fastest that particular operator has experienced in terms of filling up. We're looking at a major cost that we can address and diminish for operators using this technology. Here are the products. I'll spend a little bit of time on this. We make a wide plurality of standard commercial fixtures. We also make retrofit kits that go into decorative fixtures, an important part of especially the common areas in elder care. We make controls for these that are automatic, and we call it set and forget controls because they're quite easy to operate. There's also an app that goes with it, Apple and Android, in case setups need to be changed on the fly. And then we've added just recently a solution for the bedside lamps, because the elders do bring in to the facilities many times their own furniture and many times their own lamps. So we felt like we needed to cover the entire area and have a person moving within one lighting plant. We needed a solution for the lamp, and we've just added that to our activities. So I think I'm pretty well on time here, but I will say thank you and encourage any questions that are posed, and happy to answer them.